Welcome back, Chevra. Tzvi broker with Rabbi Gerzi at the Pilzno Work Inspired podcast. And as we have the opportunity to be able to sit here during this period of time called by many vacation, if you're not sure if you call it vacation, why it's called vacation, make sure to check out our other podcasts. But what I'd say is that as we have this period of time, a change in our regular schedule, especially when it comes to school, kids being out of school, I think it's a great time just to be able to have a seat, sit back, and reflect on this education system that we're so much part of and see how it ultimately connects to jobs and career success. What do you think about the topic?
What do I think about the topic? I think it's a very hot topic, and I think it's quite a tension-filled topic, and specifically and especially in where you live. So in Eretz Yisrael, chinuch is, I would say it's not poshut. It isn't poshut. I think in England and America, in a certain respect, chinuch is, from my experience, a lot easier. However, in regards of education, I think there's fundamental, basic questions that we need to ask. What's it for?
For sure.
Or why do we go to school? What is it for? Why are we going to school? And yeshiva, like, okay, you could say we learn. The typical, the typical narrative is, okay, I go to school to learn things, specific things, because obviously we know we don't learn everything, and it's meant to add up to getting good marks in certain disciplines, and then moving forward to get better marks in certain disciplines, then eventually going to maybe university or getting a job.
Right.
It adds up to hopefully getting a good job. That's what I like to call.
It's what I like to call sometimes when I've done these talks. It's called like the happily ever after story.
Yes.
And
yes.
It's funny you mentioned about the difference between cultures. As if you haven't noticed yet from the accent, I think I still have an American accent. I think I'm married to somebody who's British, but I think I still have an American accent.
Yeah. That's why we speak, because we're from England and his wife is English, so that's why we're still
able to make it work. And we're sitting here in Israel, and it's so interesting because I know from having conversations with people that are within the Israeli education system that often may think, it's just the Israeli education system, but the education system in America or in England, it doesn't have as many issues. But I just want to share, just one story. This is somebody who I just sat with recently, and it's a story that's happened many, many times with Gerzi, I'm sure hundreds of times. And here I was meeting with somebody, and he was from America. And he's a professional. He had gone through high school where he learned a full secular education. He had gone through a first degree, a second degree, and had working in different jobs. But why was he meeting with me? He was meeting with me because he was honest with himself and had the courage to actually speak with someone that he was just not happy with what he's doing. He found that he was just not fulfilled. He found he had been in different jobs. He felt that he wasn't excited about what he was doing. He felt like he wasn't really feeling that he was expressing himself and succeeding. And when we have this conversation, right, and this is the conversations we're having with people, what's coming out of the conversation is that the root of it, one root of what's going on is actually within the education system. Because even in an education system where we are spending hours and spending a lot of money, right, especially in 𝗧𝗏, spending a lot of money and learning a lot of topics, people can go through this whole system with this happily ever after story. If I get good grades, then I'm going to get into a good college, then I'm going to get good grades, then I'm going to get the job, and then happily ever after. Everything's going to work out. Well, the truth is that for so many people,
and it's going up. It's not just so many people. Percentages are going up and up and up and up.
Right, what do they call it? They call it, and when I've given this talk in seminaries, I always say, don't worry. It's called the disengagement crisis, but nothing to do with marriage.
Yeah, people have this expectation. I'll get a good job, stay in a good job,
and it's just going to work out.
And we see it's just people don't know what jobs to get. They've been through college. You would think they've got a degree. So if I've got a degree, I will then logically have that job. But no. And the statistics are growing. We've been This is something that we've been bothering ourselves with
and researching for a
a
long
number
time.
of years already. So people can have several degrees today because they've jumped from degree to degree, and they still don't have a job because they're not fulfilled in their jobs, or they've tried this or tried that. And more than that, you go into, like, the whole question of college. It's a whole question anyway. Should you go to college? Do you need to go to college?
It's being rethought today, actually.
Correct, because you have, for example, we had in the Beis HaMedrash, there's a Yid who has been learning in Kollel, and he was meant to go to university, and we suggested, I sat with him, I suggested a slightly different route. I said, listen, you want to do coding, work for this person for free, learn the basics of coding. He could, financially he could, and then from that he ended up doing 2 basic courses, and he got himself some good experience. So this is the matzav. He's sitting in Tel Aviv, he's sitting next to somebody, he's now done coding for about a year. He's sitting next to somebody who has a degree but has no prior work experience. Who got the job? This Yid, who without the degree but has the experience, got the job over the person who has the degree. And we're seeing that more and more. But that's just in the education system, because if you think about it, the workplace today, there's a major disconnect between the workplace. We'll speak about another disconnect in a minute as well, if you remind me. But the nakuda of being just a normal, healthy human being. But you have the disconnect between what's expected of one at work and actually what you've learnt in university or college or school that's meant to bridge.
Right. And
so, one example. You now today in the workplace, people expect you to be your own manager in a number of places. They expect you to be self-motivated, to be your own manager. It could even be, I have a friend of mine, he has a company, so he doesn't work from 9 to 5. He works from project to project. So if a person has 6 projects and they finish all their 6 projects adequately in a shorter amount of time, then if they've done it in the morning, they can have the rest of the day off. Yet in school, it's micromanaged. In school, it's very selected. So, for example, one of our mentors would say that we sit at the table growing up. First of all, at school, when we start off as kids, we're playing in the sand and playing with toys and water. Then we get our little chair and we sit under our little chair. And then we go from first grade to second grade, and we move from the bigger chair, art. So instead of a full body experience, it then just becomes from waist up. And as you go further in your education, it comes up to head up, and then up to the left, right. Cerebralville. And this is the second problem. The second problem is, I think, apart from the transition between school and the workplace, and there being a very big disconnect, there's another problem which I think is more severe, and that is just learning to be a healthy, normal human being. So, for example, people take for granted, okay, so I've learnt about mathematics, and I've learnt about basic business skills and science. So a lot of that we don't use, but it's good to know anyway. It's good to have general knowledge, 100%. But lemashal, people walk out of school, they have no money education. You would think, 1 minute, work, money. Right. People aren't educated about money. People aren't educated about saving, investments, anything like that. Like, it's just not part of the curriculum. But you may logically, after a conversation like this, think to yourself, oh wow, that actually is a little bit strange. Maybe we should educate our kids about money. Maybe we should educate our kids, like, as we mature, relationships. Again, it's relationships. How do we deal with relationships? How do we deal with marriage? Like, things that's needed in being a healthy, normal human being, we don't learn. We learn in school a slither of the cake of human experience.
Well, it's so interesting, because I've read, somebody who's in the field, I read articles how on one hand you have this crisis where you have so many people that are looking for jobs.
Yes.
And then on the flip side, you have the crisis of the companies that can't find people. And it was sometimes like, being somewhere in the middle is working with people that are looking for jobs, and talking to recruiters. It's like a funny thing. It's like,
you sit there,
have so many people, right, that want the
from our
jobs.
perspective, you sit there like, scratching your head. What?
Like, what's going on?
I've got a spreadsheet in front of me, people looking for jobs, companies looking to hire. It's like, what is going on?
So what do they say? They're showing that it's one of like what's lacking, and it's a funny thing also as from Jews to like read this list, because you also think about how much this is meant to be built into our own curriculum of midos development and the way the soft underlining skills of what it means to learn in a base medrash. Communication skills, responsibilities, soft skills, exactly. It's the soft skills. So there's an aspect of education that's just focusing on hard skills, and then the soft skills, which are needed to be able to plug in those hard skills, so that therefore people could function and be productive. That's something which is lacking, and that's so fascinating what you're mentioning. In terms of the fact that school doesn't necessarily address that, but within school itself, within school, and it's funny that gave that very visual. I was imagining myself, it's like that little kid playing, and you see your little kids playing, like, okay, Mazel Tov, you've graduated, now you're going to first grade, and he's so excited, and he sits down, he's like, What's just happened? As time goes on and on, the question is what happens to the human experience? I know that one of our favorite authors and really spokesman, for this topic within the general world, not within the Jewish world, right? Sir Ken Robinson, where this was a passion of his, and he recently just passed away, and he dedicated his life, and he himself was somebody who was a brilliant, and he was in the academic world, that he spoke passionately about the fact that when it comes to education, we're using an archaic model, which even though everything else in the world seems to be developing, when it comes to education, we're not asking those questions, right? And it's fascinating when you learn the sociology, we can't get into it right now, of understanding where academia even came from, the word, the whole entire...
I want to just one thing.
Okay, a little bit.
When Ken Wilber, when we had our first conversation many years ago.
Ken Robinson?
Ken Robinson.
You spoke with
Robinson.
him? Oh, amazing! I never got a chance to speak with him.
He said, think about it. We're living in the 21st century. I think we're in the 21st century. 21st century, and we're using a education system from the Industrial Revolution.
Right.
That's what he said.
It's
everything else is evolving around us, and the education system, it's only in the last 15 years that people are waking up and thinking, oh, okay, they're trying to make changes.
I'll tell you where my hope is. My hope is that something that, also a favorite topic of ours, but one thing that we're seeing a shift taking place is this concept of what they call human-focused design, right? Which is this, it's a chiddush, right? It's not really so much of a chiddush, that we're humans, we're people, and we need to take into consideration that we're not robots. And therefore, when we're trying to design experiences, websites, apps, programs, we need to take into consideration people. And it's our prayer that hopefully soon we're going to start to look at education as people-focused education, which means that we need to take into consideration people. Often the joke that I share, I specifically like to share this when I've spoken in high schools. Once I talk about this topic of what creates career success and career engagement, and I do an activity, right, for people to get a little bit of insight into what's called their career personality. We kind of break down the different types of career personalities that are out there that we see that are really the underpinnings of all of work, and we see that yes, people are different, and we see that people have different talents and different skills. And the joke that I throw out there, is that if you're imagining the classroom, and you have like the teacher who's over there, and and then the principal gets called in because the class is not being productive. So it's that creative genius in class, the creative geniuses in the class that are going to be the ones that are basically designing the principal's interior design of his home. That they're like the trouble kids because they're daydreaming or doodling, and then the one who's going to be the construction builder of the principal's home, he's basically in trouble because he's fiddling under the desk all the time because he's just he just needs to be involved with something. And then the sales agent who's going to sell the principal his home, he basically is always in the principal's office because the fact that he's just
buying and selling,
is buying and selling, and he basically doesn't like authority, right? And then you have the totally talented kids that are going to become the therapists of this principal's kids. Like, they're just always talking to their friends and they're always in trouble. So, like, you're going to have, like, all these kids that are tremendously talented, tremendously capable, will be, unless they're damaged by thinking that they're not tremendously talented because they've gone through a certain school system, will become tremendously successful. But is the school system that we're familiar with, and many of us are familiar with, going to help them to bring that out? Or is it going to hinder them because of the fact that the education system in many environments is only focused on a small percentage? Not just of the core skills and hard skills, even within the hard skills, it's actually focused on about a third of people, and it's scary to think about that, because as Jews, right, as Yidden, what do we say about this topic? What do we say about how we should be machanech people?
Yeah, I mean, it reminds me, there's a meme. You have a teacher, and the teachers organize like this little.
I think it's a British thing.
I don't know what it's called. It was like this little thing I saw in the paper.
Oh.
And what happens? Maybe I'm using the wrong lotion, but what happens is you have a teacher, and the teacher's standing there with a whistle and a gun. Everyone's gonna have a race to run up the tree. Let's see who's gonna win. And then you see a goldfish in a tank, a monkey, an elephant, and like, guess who's going to win? And I really think we are in a situation where, like you mentioned, we've got this famous pasuk. What's our famous pasuk that we quote? That has to be understood in context as well.
When it comes to general chinuch, right? That we try to guide people chinuch, according each one according to its own Torah.
And it seems to be what could be. Again, we're two people sitting here. We really don't have much pull in the world. We've got our own little 𝗟𝗘𝗦𝗧 that we're trying to figure out, but we can visualize, we can imagine, just bring out the dimyain and the machshava within this conversation, within this sikha, and it should be a tefillah 𝗟𝗓𝗧 𝗏. So right now, it's very limited. If you think about it, in any world, we've been in exile for thousands of years. We really have been in exile for a long time. So just take in the secular world. If, for example, we had a more expanded, fattened out education system, sports or art, music, which usually gets left behind because, as you said, it focuses. So that would be amazing. That would be amazing. Psychology, drama, and there are a lot of schools. I mean, when I was in school, we did music. I was the only person in the year that did music for my GCSEs.
Right.
I did music, and there was art. I did music, and Baruch Shem. I mean, it was expected. I didn't even have to be so good because I was like the only person in the year. I got an A+. It's like, and art as well. But then the nakuda is just to realize and to give. I will premise this. It's expensive. But what my parents did for me, they sent me to martial arts. They sent me to music. I went to music studios and I learned how to be in a music studio and sound engineering. They sent me to scouts. I did Queen Scout Award. And that's so important. That was on the guidance of Baba Sali. Baba Sali said to my father when I was a baby, send him out to do like judo. I don't think he said judo, but send him out to be active and send him to do things. And it's so important. Give kids the ability to experience a plethora of different activities.
Well, it's interesting because it is true what you shared about schools, and I know even when I was back in high school, it's been some time, but as I meet with people, I'll ask them, what was your favorite subject? When trying to understand people and their background and their skills, I'm hearing more and more that schools have opened up more of a wider range towards different activities. But I think some of the sense though is that even though they may offer, whether it's extracurricular or they give a class, the bulk of the focus of what's considered to be the success is limited, and it's so important. And this is a message I really wanted to put out there.
It's a message for me. You're talking to me. I need to do more of this with my kids.
Yeah, I mean, as parents, 100%, and
giving out.
For each one of us to recognize we need to know what our intelligence is. And it could be that it's people that have gone through an education system which was focused on specific areas, right? Whether in your school was math, science, right? It could be, for your school, it could have been something else that may have given a certain vision. This is what's considered to be super successful, to recognize that in the workplace, that's not true.
Not true.
In the workplace, it's not true. In the workplace, what's most important is know what you're good at, know what your intelligence is, get the specific training that's going to help you, surround yourself around the right people, and go for the gold. Get the core skills, the soft skills, the communication skills. That's what's ultimately there. And as parents, as you said, we need to provide this for our kids, because whether or not we want to discuss right now why isn't our Jewish educational systems going according to, right, we were talking about before, this amazing Torah from the 𝗟𝗓, right? The 𝗟𝗓, he's speaking about, I believe it's in Parshas 𝗟𝗓𝗧. I believe it's in Parshas 𝗟𝗓. At the end, in Shemos, when we're talking about the Mishkan, he speaks about it. He says, "In ba adam lasos beis omnus alamit litinokos omnus." If a person were to set up a school to teach kids different trades, you just go and take a lot of kids. To choose whatever they want, different booths. You want to learn this, you want to learn art, you want to learn math, you want to learn building, you want to learn dance. Give them the options. You'll find kids know, I want to do this, and we know each one of our children are drawn towards this. And the Mitzvah says is that bechira itself, or that choice where a child is going according to his teva that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave him, that helps him to be matzliach. And he says that's what happened in the Mishkan. Each person was drawn towards something else. So, whether or not we talk about this question, it's not really so much for now. Why is it that we haven't adapted? And if you're in education, please reach out to us. There is what can be done so that we within our educational system can better empower our children
I think
to succeed.
It's the same with Torah as well. It's the same with Torah, because when we speak about the Torah world, think about for a moment what happens. Okay, we start off, we learn a bissel Tanakh. And then from Tanakh we learn a little bit of Mishnah, and then from Mishnah we go and learn some Gemara, Rishonim, Achronim. We have a Yeshiva Shemesechtes, and then we after go to Kollel we learn the same, and then we spend the rest of our lives. For so many people, they spend the rest of their lives learning the same Masechtes,
right?
Or they do a Daf Yomi. Now I remember sitting with one of my mentors, Rabbi Moshe Shapira. And Rabbi Moshe Shapira said, that's not how we should be learning. Even with Torah, there's epis of an exile saying that, though, Chazdei Hashem, we're hanging on. Chazdei Hashem, any word of Torah, any word of Tefillah, any word of anything is absolutely amazing. Chazdei Hashem. And what Reb Moshe Shapira, Zichron Livracha, what he said is as following. He opened up a Ramchal, and he opened a Ramchal, he opened up a Gra, he opened up all the Lipvasha, Vedas Farim. We may think, Baal Shem Tov, but no. Gra, Ramchal, that what happens after, we've reached a certain age, we should learn Pnimius HaTorah. We should learn Ramchal and Gra and Zoya and Seif, like the Arizal and the Hasidic Sfarim. That should be part of our dietary intake. That should be part of our nutrition. It's so important. But for so many people, they don't explore that. And it's an amazing thing by Rabbi Moshe Shapira. He really was an unbelievable educator. So you'd have somebody, and they would sit with him, and he says, "You're learning too much Gemara. I want you for the next few months to Gemara for 2 hours, and then learn this Sefer and this Sefer and this Sefer." And it was an unbelievable thing, because many Talmidim of Rav Moshe Shapira, they were educated, they were given that nutrition, they were given those options to explore different chalakim of Torah. And that's very important as well. So we see the same issue that's right now manifesting in the workplace. We see it in Torah. And hopefully we can have the das and the yeshiva das and the menuchas hanefesh, the confidence and the courage in order to open up and explore and have those deep connections and practicality, because everyone has their genius. That's really what we're speaking about. Everybody has their genius, and The very simple fact they're born into this world is that the world cannot live without that genius. Each and every one have something to give, and the fact that every single day Hashem Yisborach gets us up, it's our mission statement to realize, I've got my own creativity, I've got my own genius, and the world is waiting for it.
Wow. And as adults, we're charged by Hashem, as we say that 𝗦𝗨𝗕𝗦𝗖𝗥𝗜𝗕𝗘, we have to know what our genius is. You have to know what your genius is, because only once you understand what that is and then use it, right, are you going to be able to fulfill your particular individual mission in the world. And as parents, we all need to be the Rav Moshe Shapiro. We have to be those people for our kids. School does its best. Is there room to improve? 100%. But it may not get to be what we would love it to be. But as parents, we need to be the Rav Moshe Shapiro for our children, and to understand our children. As you shared beautifully how Rabbi's parents invested, and it's an investment to say, I see what my child's genius is. If you don't know what your child's genius is, go find it out. Work with someone. Find it out. Look, you need to find it out, because that is going to be their key. And whether it's, like we said beautifully, that parallel, it's a big topic between work, career, professional strengths, Torah strength, to see that parallel, to understand, because that is really where each one of us are ultimately going to become successful. So just as some questions for us as we wrap up this session, I've been waiting to talk about this for so long. I know, but we have to keep these podcasts short for the consumer. There's a lot more to unpackage. Please reach out to us, to discuss it more. But some questions for us, to think about. Hopefully you've thought about this, but even if you have, what skill do you feel like you gained the most from in your education? Whatever education you did, what skill, what class, what course, what do you feel was something that was a big takeaway for you? And secondly, what other skills do you feel that you've developed in life that have helped you to become who you are? And what is some type of a skill that you wish, if you just had the time, if you had the ability, you have this deep sense that if you'd be able to dedicate more time to it, you'd really be able to become great in it. Some questions for us to walk away, and for us to be able to slowly, with 𝗖𝗛𝗓, be able to bring out our unique genius.
Amen.
Have a good day.